Check 1, 2, 3. Now is the time for all good men.
think we're just waiting on one more. Commissioner?
Right, we do have 7 members present. Only Commissioner Lund hasn't joined yet.
We do have enough for a quorum. Should we begin?
Yeah, if we have a quorum, we can go ahead and begin.
Good afternoon. My name is Lori Fleck, Commissioner Fleck. I'll be I'm sitting in for Commissioner Stewart today. Before we get started, our order of business, we're going to have a call to order and roll call. Commissioners, please state your attendance. Commissioner Brown. Commissioner Brown.
Present, sorry.
Thank you. Commissioner Flick, present. Commissioner Lund.
Present.
Commissioner Mobley.
Present.
Commissioner Stieg.
Here.
Commissioner Marshall.
Present.
Commissioner Riedberg.
Present.
Commissioner Witry.
Present.
First order of business, we're going to approve the meeting minutes from the last 2 meetings. There's meeting minutes of the September 22nd meeting as well as the October 13th meeting. Is there a motion to approve those meeting minutes?
Brown moves approval.
Thank you, Commissioner Brown. Second,
Witry seconds.
Commissioner Witry. I'll do a roll call for approval. Is that right? Council?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Commissioner Brown?
Yes.
Commissioner Flick, yes. Commissioner Lund?
Yes.
Commissioner Marshall?
Yes.
Commissioner Mobley?
Yes.
Commissioner Stieg?
Yes.
Commissioner Riedberg?
Yes.
Commissioner Witry?
Yes.
Thank you. Now we're going to do a reading of the hearing rules, followed by the presentation of the dockets, a 30-minute recess, the consideration of the dockets, and adjournment. The presentation of dockets. The order of business for each docket shall be as follows. Presentation by the City Planning Commission staff or the Department of Safety and Permit staff. Presentation by the applicant or their representative. The applicant or applicant may appear on their behalf or be represented by a duly authorized agent. Only one representative may speak on behalf of the request and must pre-register with the staff of the City Planning Commission. Other representatives or speakers may sign up to provide comments during the public comment portion of the meeting. The applicant shall be allowed a maximum of 3 minutes. Questions from members. The members have an opportunity to ask questions to the staff or the applicant. The commission board shall take a 30-minute recess to allow members of the public to comment. Public comment rules. Only written public comment will be allowed. Live public comment will not be allowed. No member of the public may submit more than 1 written comment per agenda item. Time allowed for public comment. The public comment form will be made available at the start of the meeting and will close at the end of the 30-minute recess. Form. Public comments must be submitted electronically on the form provided by the City Planning Commission. Any comment missing this information will not be read aloud. Each submission must contain the commenter's first and last name, the commenter's address, whether the commenter is being paid in connection with his or her comments, and the agenda item. Reading of public comments. A moderator will read into the record all comments pertaining to that item that have been submitted in accordance with these rules. Comments will be read aloud in a normal speaking voice. The moderator will discontinue reading a comment once it exceeds 2 minutes. Rebuttal by the applicant. Following the public comment period, if there is opposition, the authorized representative of the application is allowed a rebuttal not to exceed 3 minutes. Questions from members. Following the public comment and rebuttal, the members have an opportunity to ask questions of the staff or the applicant. Voting. Making a motion. The member may make a motion, shall clearly state their name when making a motion. For example, I, Commissioner Flick, move to approve, deny the request. Seconding a motion. The member seconding a motion shall clearly state their name when seconding the motion. For example, I, Commissioner Flick, second the motion made by Commissioner Flick. Statement by chair. The chair will restate the motion, confirming who made the motion and who seconded the motion. Voting, the chair will request a verbal vote from each member by roll call. Each member will indicate a yay to vote in support of the motion or a nay in opposition. And now for the presentation of dockets. Zoning docket 8220.
Zoning docket 8220 is a request for a conditional use to allow a specialty restaurant with drive-through facility on a currently vacant property on South Claiborne Avenue that measures approximately 11,290 square feet. It's at the corner of South Claiborne and 4th Street. The applicant proposes to build a 500 square foot coffee shop that features 2 drive-through lanes with 2 ordering kiosks, as well as a walk-up window and covered patio in front of the building. Following the last City Planning Commission meeting, the applicant submitted revised plans addressing the concerns raised by both the staff and the Design Advisory Committee about the proposed building and the site design. Notably, the off-street parking was reduced and moved towards the interior of the site. The building was moved closer to the front and corner side property lines. Architectural revisions were made that satisfy the Design Advisory Committee comments, as well as the requirement from the CZO. Therefore, we recommend approval subject to 1 waiver and 11 provisos.
Thank you. Is the applicant's representative Becca Hurst on the line?
I am here.
Thank you. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Good afternoon, commissioners. Rebecca Hurst, 800 Barone Street, here on behalf of the applicant. I also have Aubrey Miller, who is the developer and PJ's operator, sitting here in the room in case there are operational questions from the commissioners. First, I'd like to thank staff for the recommendation of approval. Over the past few weeks, we have worked with both Stephen and Sabine to adjust our site plan and building design to better fit with the master plan, zoning district, and design overlay. As Sabine outlined, this is a request for a drive-through PJ's coffee shop. In addition to the drive-through, the site will feature a prominent patio with a walk-up windows for customers to order from. There will be thoughtful pedestrian access and ample bike parking. We feel that the proposed PJ's will be a great asset to the Claiborne corridor and the surrounding community. It is consistent with the development character of the neighborhood and with the master plan. With regard to the provisos, we agree with all of them, with the exception of proviso 9F, which addresses the use standards of drive-throughs and requires a traffic impact analysis. As you may remember, this commission and eventually the City Council approved a text amendment removing that requirement and replacing it with a traffic plan. Since the traffic plan is the new requirement, we kindly request that the proviso be altered to reflect that new law. We are excited to bring this new project to fruition and respectfully ask for your support.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the commissioners, from the applicant, or from staff? I have a question for staff. Are we able to adopt the new rule for the traffic plan for proviso 9F?
Yeah, this is the text amendment was just approved by the council, I believe, at the beginning of October, and the changes were just made in the CZO since then. So I believe, yeah, that it's appropriate to make a motion to change that proviso to what currently is in the CZO.
Great. Are there any other questions? We'll move on to the next docket, 8320.
In May of 2020, the City Planning Commission voted to adopt staff's recommendations to allow the use of established multifamily dwellings with less than 5 units and establish 2-family dwellings in all zoning districts where these uses are currently a conditional use. Zoning docket 083-20 is a request via City Council motion M-20-279 for a text amendment to the comprehensive zoning ordinance with similar implications and the additional request to 1, distinguish these established uses from other non-conforming uses, 2, create factors and requirements for the reestablishment of established multifamily 2-family dwellings, and 3, determine if these established dwellings should be permitted by right in all residential districts where multifamily use is currently prohibited or requires a conditional use, And 4, recommend whether conditional uses, overlays, or other standards should govern the redevelopment of established dwellings within residential areas of the city near institutional uses such as universities to ensure that the encroachment of student housing into surrounding neighborhoods does not diminish affordable housing stock. The CZO defines, excuse me, established multifamily dwelling as, quote, a residence with a history of multifamily use, which is authorized to operate as a multifamily residence. This text amendment considers the factors that would allow an established multifamily structure to operate by right for the second time. The established multifamily use is distinguished from other non-conforming uses in that there is a documented pattern of small multifamily structures across the city, many of which continue to provide important rental housing stock to New Orleanians today. As shown in this slide, the first zoning map of New Orleans permitted multifamily housing. Most commonly, 4-family dwellings were permitted, and in the areas shown in blue. In many of our historic neighborhoods, subsequent zoning ordinance gradually downzoned most of these areas by changing zoning designations to restrict new development to single or 2-family housing, such that today, only 11% of all land in Orleans Parish outside of the CBD permits development of a dwelling with more than 2 housing units. Next slide, please. The data on non-conforming use determinations in the last 5 years demonstrates that there is a strong demand to preserve the small multifamily dwellings that exist and the rental opportunities they provide across the city. There have been over 200 determinations made by safety and permits for non-conforming dwellings in the last 5 years. The large majority of these structures are triplexes or fourplexes, which is indicative of historic zoning regulations. Next slide, please. As we know, New Orleans is in the midst of an affordable housing crisis. There's a desperate demand for small, affordable 1 and 2 bedroom apartments. This is the second way in which the established multifamily use is differentiated from other nonconformities. Unlike other undesirable uses left over from industrial or commercial zoning, housing is urgently needed in New Orleans, especially the type of affordable rental housing many established multifamily structures currently provide. The gulf between what a typical New Orleanian can afford and available housing stock has widened dramatically in recent years. In 2019, 34% of New Orleans renters spent more than half of their income on housing costs, and the median value of a single-family home has nearly doubled since 2000. As labor shortages and significant increases in the cost of development make it increasingly challenging to build new and affordable rental housing, it has become more important that the city makes its best efforts to maintain existing housing opportunities. A report by Enterprise Community Partners found that existing multifamily dwellings with 3 to 20 units comprise 56% of the nation's subsidized housing stock. Established multifamily structures in New Orleans also present opportunities for natural, affordable, unsubsidized rental opportunities. There is research to suggest that neighborhoods with a mix of housing types, ranging from single family to small multifamily, are more resilient in periods of economic hardship and facilitate racial and economic integration. Finally, creating a greater range of housing diversity is a prominent goal in Chapter 6, Housing and Neighborhoods in the New Orleans Master Plan, which is strongly aligned with the staff's recommendations for this use. Next slide, please. Currently, if the owner of a non-conforming dwelling wishes to make a modification that requires a permit, such as a renovation or new construction adding on to a home, safety and permits must make a determination on 3 factors. 1, if there is a documented legal history of multifamily or 2-family use. 2, how many units were established on the property. And 3, if that use has been continued or not. To reach these determinations, Safety and Permits considers a range of documentation provided by the applicant, including photos, aerial imagery, utility meters, utility bills, leases and rent receipts, and sometimes affidavits. The definition documented legal history includes those units which may not have been permitted by the zoning code when they were created under state law, which states that if zoning does not enforce regulations within a period of 5 or 10 years, the legal use is acquired. Next slide. A non-conforming use may continue to operate as long as Safety and Permits finds that the use has not been discontinued for more than 6 months or 180 days per section 25.3.c in the CZO. While most non-conforming multifamily structures continue to innocuously operate as rental housing across the city, those that have become vacant for more than 6 months must seek a conditional use or zoning change from the City Planning Commission and City Council in order to get reauthorized for use as rental housing. Many established multifamily dwellings that have not maintained legal non-conforming use were vacated following Hurricane Katrina. As a result, many non-conforming dwellings across the city remain damaged and deteriorating. Non-conforming dwellings currently operating are also at risk of losing legal non-conforming status if a transfer of ownership occurs as well. Staff finds many of the established multifamily structures that have gone through the conditional use process were foreclosed or sat vacant during a succession process, which resulted in the loss of their legal non-conforming status. These vacancies are a result of the current procedural barriers to maintaining established multifamily structures, and their continued vacancy and blight can have a range of negative impacts on communities, including reduced property values, fire risk, and in the worst cases, rodent infestation and structural instability. Next slide, please.
This map shows the areas considered for modification in this text amendment. The purple dots indicate the location of all conditional use applications received by the CPC in the last 5 years. There's a strong approval history for the established multifamily dwellings that are reviewed by CPC and the City Council. In the last 5 years, only 2 conditional use applications for established multifamily have not been approved by Council. In both cases, the structure had a legal history of more than 5 dwelling units. The conditional use process is a lengthy, discretionary process intended to be reserved for potentially impactful developments that are clearly incompatible with the surrounding area. This does not describe the hundreds of doubles, fourplexes, and triplexes, which have been able to continue to operate as legal non-conforming uses across the city. Additionally, the unanimously positive case history for structures of this type indicate that the conditional use process is an unnecessary use of CPC staff and applicants' time as applied to this housing type. Therefore, staff's original recommendation remains the same. Legal structures with a legal documented history of 4 or fewer units shall be a permitted use. Next slide, please. Staff believes that there should be an opportunity for larger established multifamily structures to be put back in use, given the need for additional affordable housing opportunity in the city and the impracticality of reducing the existing density of larger multifamily structures to a single or a double. In single and 2-family zoning districts, it is reasonable for multifamily structures providing 5 or more units to continue to be considered through a discretionary process. However, staff recommends permitting existing multifamily structures providing more than 4 units in the MS Medical Service District and HUB1 Neighborhood Business District, which are intended to accommodate higher intensity uses. Next slide.
Following comments from the October 27th CPC hearing, Commissioner Mobley and Commissioner Stieg requested that staff consider limitations or prohibitions on the operation of short-term rentals in established multifamily structures to ensure that this use is utilized for its intended use as long-term housing for residents in New Orleans. Given the barriers to providing new multifamily development in the city, established multifamily structures present a limited opportunity to provide rental units at a size and a cost that is better suited to the demand of New Orleans residents than new development. Staff therefore agrees with the intention behind the request to prohibit the use of short-term rentals in established multifamily dwellings going forward. However, it is now more difficult to limit the use of short-term rentals than it was previously when these new regulations were being drafted in 2018 and 2019. The current short-term rental regulations, which have been adopted, apply to those legally non-conforming established multifamily structures that have continuously operated across the city for decades. Meaning, if a prohibition on STR licensures affecting established multifamily dwellings is adopted, many new non-conforming uses could be created since STRs are currently allowed in such structures. Prohibiting the operation of STRs in an authorized established multifamily would create a potential inconsistency within the CZO, where rights of a permitted use would then be more limited than that of a potentially non-conforming use. However, a significant amount of CPC and council staff time has been dedicated to the regulation of short-term rentals, and there are tools in place to limit short-term rental licenses in particular circumstances. Safety and permit staff do have the ability to place flags on certain properties to prevent STR licenses from being issued. Further, a study of STR use permissions and proposed modifications through this text amendment reveals this proposal will not have a significant impact on new short-term rental opportunities in the city. STR regulations limit STR licenses to owner-occupied small short-term rentals in single and two-family residential districts across the city. As shown in the slide, small STRs are permitted to utilize only one unit in an owner-occupied building. Essentially, an established multifamily dwelling can permit no more STRs than a two-family or single-family, well, than a two-family dwelling, because it has to be owner-occupied. Large STRs are limited to areas that allow higher intensity multifamily mixed use and commercial activity, where multifamily development is typically already permitted. Large short-term rentals are a conditional use in the historic core neighborhoods where small multifamily structures are currently a permitted use. Council and CPC have discretion to deny STRs applications considered through the conditional use process or prohibit their use through provisos. But this action has really been taken when applied to the use of established multifamily structures. Next slide.
In addition to modifying the use tables for established multifamily use, staff recommends modifying the use standards to make the factors and requirements for established dwellings clear. A property owner may renovate and rent units in established multifamily dwelling or two-family dwelling if an established two-family or multifamily use must meet the following requirements as confirmed by safety and permits. A, the structure must have a documented legal history of 2 units for a two-family dwelling or 4 or fewer units for a multifamily dwelling as confirmed by safety and permits, where documented legal history is determined based on evidence of dwelling units which currently exist but may not be operating on a given property. Or B, the structure has a documented legal history of multifamily residential use providing more than 4 units, but reduces the number of dwelling units to 4 or fewer, where documented legal history is determined based on evidence of dwelling units which currently exist but may not be operating on a given property. Or C, the established multifamily structure with any number of units is within a zoning district where the use chart lists the established multifamily use as only a P, a permitted use. Or D, legal non-conforming status has been confirmed by the Department of Safety and Permits. These use standards emphasize the most recent legal documented history of the structure as the key eligibility criteria for an established multifamily use. This will support the established multifamily use to enable structures currently built with a higher number of units than is permitted in the base zoning to be allowed to operate with that elevated number of units. To capture this, staff has added this qualifier included in section 23W1A and 23W1B. Documented legal history is determined based on evidence of dwelling units which currently exist, but which may not be operating on a given property. This qualifier supports those structures which are configured with a higher number of units than are allowable in the base zoning, but which are prevented from using all units because of the base zoning. For the purposes of these use standards, legal refers to whether the structure with the number of units supported in the structure was legal according to the zoning code at that point at which it was built or later established legal non-conforming status. According to state law, cities have 5 years to enforce zoning regulations in areas outside of local historic districts and 10 years for determinations in historic districts. Therefore, where there is uncertainty as to whether a multifamily property was legal at the time it was established, if the owner can document that the use has been there for at least 5 or 10 years, safety and permits can presume it is legal at that point. Documented history in these standards refers to the documents that indicate the number of dwelling units in a structure. Safety and permit staff have noted that electricity bills are a good example of this documented history, as electricity bills will usually be split by unit. Other documents currently used, as described before, such as historic maps, floor plans, photos, utility bills, lease agreements, and affidavits that indicate the number of units supporting the structure are also allowable. Staff also recommends a provision to apply to the use standard to established detached dwelling units with a legal history of residential use. Staff also encourages the allowance of improvements to existing housing and modern updates to establish multifamily uses, many of which have delayed maintenance, by allowing the expansion of floor area within the limits of the yard and height requirements. It would not be permitted to increase the number of dwelling units within the structure where a dwelling unit includes a kitchen, bathroom, and separate entrance to the structure. Staff also addressed the concern with the safety and permits and law departments that the text amendment would create an inconsistency with non-conforming use and non-conforming structure provisions in Article 25 of the Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance. Though a multifamily structure or two-family structure may be non-conforming uses or structures currently, such structures would no longer be considered non-conforming if the use chart of the applicable zoning district authorizes them as a permitted use or upon receiving conditional use approval when conditional use is required. The uses are thereafter considered authorized uses and are not subject to the regulations of Article 25. Next slide, please. Staff believes that the use of overlay districts to limit the allowances of established multifamily uses is not an appropriate tool to address concerns regarding student housing. An overlay of this type would restrict opportunities for naturally affordable housing in some high opportunity neighborhoods with good access to jobs, amenities, and commercial corridors. This map, I think it's one the other direction. Thank you. This map shows all educational campuses in the city in blue and areas permitting higher density housing in gold. This reveals that there are a few areas that permit multifamily housing in areas surrounding educational campuses, already serving to limit the provision of multifamily housing in these areas. Staff does not believe that it is the provision or reestablishment of multifamily housing that is the cause of any issue relating to student housing, and the issue of student housing should remain apart from the question of established multifamily structures. Therefore, staff does not recommend any conditional use overlay or other standard that considers the established multifamily use alongside student housing, as these are separate issues that each merit a separate consideration. Given the need to maintain existing housing opportunities in high opportunity areas in pursuit of master plan goals to expand the array of housing stock at an appropriate scale for New Orleans' neighborhood, staff recommends modified approval of zoning docket 08320.
Thank you, Joanna. Since this is a council motion, there is no representative. Are there any questions or comments from staff, from the commissioners for staff? Hearing none, we can move on to the next zoning docket 9120.
Sorry about that. Zoning docket 9120 is a request for conditional use to permit an established multifamily dwelling in an HURD2 historic urban two-family residential district. The request would allow the existing structure, which has a physical design and layout indicative of multifamily residential use, to be utilized as a three-family dwelling. A three-family dwelling is defined as a multifamily residential use by the CZO. The structure is currently vacant and has lost its legal non-conforming status for multifamily dwelling. Due to its small size, the proposed use would likely be a fairly moderate in the overall levels of activity, noise, traffic, and parking demand it would generate. The staff believes that the request is consistent with the master plan and the general purpose of and intent of the applicable zoning district regulations, and therefore supports the application. Further, the proposal also meets the definition of an established multifamily dwelling and standards of Article 20 of the CZO, which requires documentation of a legal history of multifamily residential use and the confirmation that the physical character of the structure is indicative of a history of multifamily residential use. The subject site does indeed have a legal history, and the physical character of the structure is indicative of the history of multifamily residential use. The staff recommends approval of zoning docket 9120, subject to 4 provisos.
Thank you. Is Nicole Weber on the line?
I'm here. I have nothing to add. Just wanted to thank staff for their efforts on this.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the commission for staff or the applicant?
I have a comment, Commissioner Witry. Just to clarify, so if the previous text amendment actually went through, then applications like the one right in front of us then would not go through this process in moving forward. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you, Larry or Paul.
Thank you. Are there any other questions, comments? Thank you. Zoning docket 9120.
Zoning docket 9220. Right. Okay. Zoning docket 9220 is a request for a conditional use to permit an established multifamily dwelling in an HUB1 historic neighborhood business district. The subject property is located on 2 lots, lots C and D in the upper 9th ward. The municipal address is 1905 France Street. The site is developed with a 6-unit, 1-story masonry slab on grade structure. The applicant is requesting the established multifamily dwelling designation to allow the reestablishment of a 6-unit residence, which has been vacant since at least 2007. Historic Sanborn maps indicate the structure contained 6 units from at least 1983 to 1994, but more than likely until 2005. Due to the prolonged vacancy, the property lost its legal nonconforming status for a multifamily dwelling and must seek a conditional use for reestablishment of its historic use. Due to the small unit sizes, the proposed use would likely have moderate levels of overall activity, noise, traffic, and parking demand. The staff believes that the request is consistent with the master plan and the general purpose and intent of the applicable zoning district regulations. Furthermore, there is sufficient documentation of legal history of multifamily use, and the physical character of the structure is indicative of a history of multifamily use. Therefore, the staff recommends approval of zoning docket 9220, subject to 8 provisos.
Thank you, Rachel. Nicole, are you available?
I am here. Nicole Weber, representative for the property owner. I have one comment, proviso number 7, which reads, prior to final approval from City Planning Commission, the developer shall remove the concrete located to the North Johnson Street side of the structure in front of the dwelling entrances and replace with a pervious material. You can't see from the image on the screen, but this is a shared driveway with the property next door, and it's one contiguous kind of block of concrete. And so removal of that would affect the adjacent property to remove that. So we're asking that we strike through proviso number 7.
Thank you. Are there any comments or questions from commissioners?
Was staff aware that it was a shared driveway with the adjacent property?
I don't believe.
Is that just an oversight?
I don't believe we, when we received the report, that's when it was noted. So.
No, staff was unaware. I believe the site plan shows that it is on the lot of record. If I was looking at it correctly, I need to pull it back up. The reason why we included that proviso is because there's clearly, as you can see, there's a truck that's parked there, but the entrances to the units are on that side. And so in an attempt to prevent parking to cover the ingress and egress of those units, we recommended removing the concrete However, that's an issue if it's a shared driveway.
It allows access to the back of the property for the property on the left of the subject site.
So is that the drive with the property where the white truck is?
Yes, and that was just where they part in both properties. Well, we're waiting, obviously if this gets approved and goes through so we can renovate the building. But that's not a typical parking spot. I believe we actually park there just to take the photos. So I could be wrong on that. But I know their property is currently habitable.
So there's a servitude for that driveway?
I'm not sure about a servitude. I know it's the same property owner that owns both sites. So, but I haven't looked at the land records. So.
Okay, I'm looking at the survey and it shows the 10 feet 9 inches on that side as part of the lot.
Right. And then the additional, it's about 14 feet wide, and then the additional feet, or 13 feet wide, an additional feet comes from the adjacent.
Okay, are there any other comments or questions from commissioners?
It sounds like we can't remove that proviso unless we have documentation that it's a shared driveway. Is that correct?
I would say yes.
Any other comments? We'll move on to the next docket.
Subdivision docket 07820 is a request by the Housing Authority of New Orleans to re-subdivide lots 13B, 15A, 17A, and 19D in square 227 into 7 lots, lots X1 through X7, to maximize the number of lots on the site for the development of affordable housing. The subdivision is located in the Leonidas neighborhood, bounded by Cambronne Street, Green Street, Dante Street, and Hickory Street. The subdivision proposal calls for the creation of more than 5 lots. Therefore, it is classified as a major subdivision pursuant to Article 3, Section 3.12 of the subdivision regulations. It is to be reviewed as a Policy C subdivision in accordance with Article 3, Section 323, no changes in street pattern, which requires a public hearing for major subdivisions of this type. The subject lots are currently vacant, and the applicant proposes to re-subdivide the lots in order to maximize the number of affordable housing units available on the site. Each of the proposed lots have a width of 30 feet and a depth of 120 feet, which are dimensions consistent with the residential lots in the surrounding neighborhood. The dimensions are also compliant with the bulk regulations for the HURD2 district in which these lots are located. The proposed lot sizes would accommodate both single and 2-family residences for the zoning district. The applicant intends to develop 2-family residential dwellings on these newly created lots. Currently, the subject lots are 4 lots, all of which have primary frontage on Cambronne Street. The re-subdivision proposes the creation of 7 lots, 3 of which would have frontage on Cambronne Street, the remaining 4 fronting on Hickory Street. Under Section 555 lot size, the subdivision regulations require that the lot size shall vary with the zoning classification of the property. It also states that lots to be used for residential purposes shall conform to the lot area requirements of the district regulations. The proposed lots meet all specification of the lot area requirements and have dimensions consistent with the lots sharing the block and in the surrounding neighborhood. The subdivision regulations also require landscaping of the adjacent street in conjunction with major subdivision applications. Section 693, landscaping within the right-of-way of the existing streets, requires the submittal of a landscape plan for the existing public right-of-way adjacent to the proposed lots, which must be approved by the Department of Parks and Parkways. The reorientation of the proposed lots would result in a reversal of lot frontage for lots X1 through X4, since these lots would be oriented away from Cambronne Street to Hickory Street. Article 5, Section 518 of the New Orleans subdivision regulations discourages the reversals of lot frontage that will result in the required yards abutting required side yards, which would be the result in this case. Article 5, Section 518 allows the approval of lot reversals when the lot pattern within 500 feet of the proposed subdivision has development on which 50% or more have similar frontages. This is the case in patterns in the area surrounding this subdivision, as the lot pattern would match what is across both streets. This makes the proposed reversal acceptable. The proposal meets applicable requirements of the subdivision regulations, the comprehensive zoning ordinance, and promotes the land use goals of the plan for the 21st century. Staff is therefore supportive of the proposal and recommends one waiver of the standards within the subdivision regulations that is not applicable for the proposal, as well as the imposition of provisos necessary to ensure all aspects of the re-subdivision are in accordance with the subdivision regulations and all other requirements. The staff recommends approval of subdivision docket 07820 with final approval subject to one waiver and 4 provisos.
Thank you. Is Malako Hattori on the call?
Yes, there's no additional comments. I just like to thank you, Joanna, for preparing a report and a presentation.
Thank you. And you're okay with all the provisos?
Yes, we will accept all the provisos.
Thank you. Are there any comments from the commissioners for staff or the applicant? No? Thank you.
Hello.
We can hear you.
Okay, I think I missed my cue. Subdivision docket 108-20 considers the re-subdivision of a single lot of record, lot 6-A, into 2 new lots of record, 6B and lot 6C, to separate 2 existing dwellings that currently both occupy lot 6A. The subject property is located in an HURD2 historic urban 2-family residential district in the Leonidas neighborhood. And the lots are bounded by Cone Street, Juliet Street, Spruce Street, and Cambron Street. The municipal addresses are 8417 and 8421-8423 Con Street, with the second property being a 2-family residential structure. One of the structures on the lot predates 1929, according to Sanborn maps, and therefore the subdivision request is considered as a policy E subdivision. The proposed lots will measure 30 feet by 120 feet and 20 feet by 120 feet respectively. And the new lot line will provide appropriate side yard setbacks. While this creates a deficiency in lot width according to bulk and yard regulations for the HURD2 district, policy E grants the right for the City Planning Commission to waive these requirements, assuming the following criteria are met. 1, satisfactory evidence is submitted indicating existence of structures prior to 1929. B, the request to separate buildings involves only main or principal buildings. C, proposed side yard lot lines comply as nearly as possible with the subdivision regulations and the comprehensive zoning ordinance. D, the proposed lots shall contain a minimum of 1,800 square feet. And E, the proposed lots will not be an excessive variation to the neighborhood norm. Staff finds each of these requirements are met. The existing double is documented in the 1909 Sanborn maps. Both structures are primary residences occupied by different residences or households. The proposed lots comply with zoning regulations with the exception of lot width on lot 6C, and which can be waived, and both lots exceed 1,800 square feet. Finally, the proposed lots are comparable in size and dimension to other lots on the subject square. This proposal does not interfere with the goals of the master plan, and therefore staff recommends approval of subdivision 108-20, subject to 1 waiver and 3 provisos.
Thank you, Sydney. Is Karen Fernandez on the call? The owner, the owner's representative for this docket, are they on the call?
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you. Please state your name and address for record.
Karen Fernandez, 1028 Bourbon Street, Apartment C in New Orleans. Yes, I'm representing the owner, Ms. Dalton Barber. I think first, let me thank Sydney. That was an excellent job in presentation. Everything she has said, we concur with. The waiver, the provisos, it's a straightforward where we're taking a single lot and creating two lots for two separate structures. But I won't take up any more of your time unless there's any questions of me. Thank you.
Thank you. And you're fine with the 3 provisos?
Yes.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the commissioners for staff or the applicant? Hearing none, we'll move on to the next docket, 15220.
Design review 15220 considers an amendment to the development plans which were approved in conjunction with conditional use approval for a community center located at 2700 Louisa Street within the Florida area neighborhood. The structure has since been demolished due to damages from Hurricane Katrina. The new structure will be smaller than the former structure. The location of the parking area has shifted, and there is a reduction of 13 off-street parking spaces. An amendment to the approved development plans is requested to reconcile the development plans with the new proposal. Changes related to the structure and site plan are eligible for approval by the Executive Director of the City Planning Commission, while a change relative to a reduction in the number of parking spaces requires the approval of the City Planning Commission. The staff finds that all 3 changes are acceptable as they do not substantially alter the function and practical availability of off-street parking compared to the originally approved development plans. Therefore, the staff recommends approval of Design Review 15220, subject to 1 proviso.
Thank you. Is George Hero on the call?
Yes, George Hero, architect with Mathis Briere Architects, 201 St. Charles Avenue, 70170.
Thank you. You can go ahead. Give me comments.
Yeah, this was a community center for the Desire, Florida neighborhood. It was a 2-story, much larger facility. During Hurricane Katrina, it was flooded and then subsequently had to be demolished. We are rebuilding this facility with a smaller footprint and smaller square footage on the same site. We have bid the project and awarded and have a low bidder and are anxious to get started. So those are my comments. Thank you, Hallie, for your work you've done on the presentation.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the commissioners for the applicant or staff?
What was the proviso? I don't recall the proviso.
This is Haley. Yes, the proviso was to limit the building height to 30 feet because that was included in the original ordinance.
Okay. We looked up the ordinance when the building was built back then, and it had it calculated the height of a roof, a shed roof, at the midpoint of the slope. And we provided some drawings that show that the height of the roof at the midpoint is 20 something feet, actually less than what the original building was.
Okay, so the inclusion of the proviso shouldn't affect that. I'll look at the plans to double check that it's under 30 feet, but we can still include it.
Okay. Are there any other questions that you had, George?
Oh, that's it.
Thank you. Any other questions from commissioners for staff? The applicants? Hearing none. We'll move on to docket 150, to the DDD budget.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In accordance with the Louisiana revised statutes, the Downtown Development District is required to submit a plan to the New Orleans City Planning Commission specifying the public improvements, facilities and services proposed to be furnished, constructed, or acquired for the district. The City Planning Commission is required by law to review and consider the plan in order to determine whether it is consistent with the plan for the 21st century, New Orleans 2030, commonly known as the master plan. Within 30 days, the City Planning Commission must submit to the City Council its written opinion as to whether or not the plan or any portion or detail thereof is inconsistent with the comprehensive plan for the city, together with any written comments and recommendations. The DDD budget and work plan for 2021 proposes expenditures of nearly $10 million, which constitutes a decrease of nearly $2 million from its 2020 adopted budget. The plan proposes an increased property tax millage from 14.76 mils in 2020 to 17.12 mils in 2021. COVID-19 will have a substantial impact on the DDD's tax revenues for 2021. Conditions are requiring the management and the board of the DDD to take drastic actions to continue the core missions of the organization while preserving the DDD's sidewalk cleaning operations and the funding of the successful public safety model combining NOPD details and public safety rangers. The budget and work plan is consistent with the master plan. The budget acknowledges the significant impact of COVID-19 on revenues, 98% of which come from ad valorem taxes assessed on all downtown properties. Additionally, $1 million of the DDD's commitment for the infrastructure fund generated in 2020 from reserves needs to be generated from other sources in 2021. Despite the challenging conditions, DDD is continuing to provide it for its core missions. Staff recommends approval of the 2021 budget and work plan as it is consistent with the plan for the 21st century. And at this time, we'd like to ask the commission to suspend the rules to accept a PowerPoint presentation from the Downtown Development District and incorporate their director's presentation into the CPC's staff presentation, which will allow them a little more time, estimated to be 5 to 10 minutes total.
Ms. Kyle Weidberg, so moved.
I'll second. Witry.
Commissioner Weidberg moved to accept the PowerPoint presentation. Commissioner Witry seconded. I'll do a roll call vote. Commissioner Brown?
Yes, sorry.
Commissioner Flick, yes. Commissioner Lunn?
Yes.
Commissioner Marshall?
Yes.
Commissioner Mobley?
Yes.
Commissioner Stieg?
Yes.
Commissioner Weidberg?
Yes.
And Commissioner Witry?
Yes.
Thank you. All yeas, no nays.
I believe we have Kurt Weigel on the line.
Kurt?
Yeah, thank you, Paul. Can everybody hear me now?
Yes.
Good. Well, this is always a pleasure to come to Planning Commission at this time of year because all through the year we partner on a number of initiatives and giving each other feedback on various downtown issues. So thanks as always to the outstanding staff at the Planning Commission, to Paul Kramer particularly for his work on this, and to the entire commission itself. What I'd like to do is just talk a little bit, because this has been such an extraordinary year, talk a little bit about what we have accomplished despite COVID in 2020, what are some of the high points of our work plan for 2021, and then Anthony Carter, our Director of Finance and Administration, will say a few words about the numbers themselves, how that translates. Suffice it to say at this point that we have taken a major hit to our revenue as projected based on valuation changes downtown, primarily because of decreases in hospitality property valuation. We're expecting right about a 32% decrease in total revenue to the DDD. So next year, the challenge is to continue to accomplish what we have been able to over many years with substantially less money to do it, while at the same time spending a lot more money on stormwater infrastructure, consistent with our freshly minted CEA between us and the city. And Anthony will say a few additional words about that. But as soon as COVID broke, the DDD knew that it was different times, that we had to react. We had to make people feel as safe as possible downtown, and we had to prepare downtown for a rebound at some point. So some of the things that we did, we started immediately on the cleaning side with sanitizing all surfaces that are commonly used, transit terminals and trash cans and the like. We have now run 2 separate ad campaigns to promote downtown businesses, primarily retail and restaurant businesses, reminding folks, some of whom have not been downtown to their offices in a number of months, that our businesses need them, that these businesses have been there for them, and that they continue to need their support. And then the third major thing that we've done is we've started to plan for the future, and this is something that this is clearly an objective that we share with the Planning Commission, understanding what it takes to attract new investment, to create the kind of quality of life and the neighborhoods that we've been able to grow downtown over the last more than a decade, I'll say at this point. So some of the things that we still, despite COVID, were able to do, in addition to just those COVID response items, is that we opened Legacy Park right at the end of 2019. We have, as soon as it's been safe, we've started programming Legacy Park, which is in the 700 block of Barone Street. I hope that y'all, if you've not been, have a chance to stop by. It's a beautiful little pocket park that we built because of the generosity of many of our downtown stakeholders above and beyond what they pay us in tax payments every year. We had many contributors to build this over $200,000 park, and did it in partnership with the NOLA Public Schools and with the International High School on whose land this is actually built. A little bit more on that later. There's a new mural by a local artist being implemented right now as we speak on the wall of that park. So once again, please go and take a look at Legacy Park, because I think it is one of the still unheralded great successes downtown in the last year. We've continued our homeless outreach throughout COVID. Just so far this year, we've housed 58 people off the streets of downtown. We, as you know, we have our own outreach team headed up by a social worker who has trained many of our our rangers, I should say, in how to effectively reach out to the homeless population. So that ends up being both a humanitarian impact that we're able to have, as well as a quality of life for everyone else downtown. We donated a third vehicle. This is the third vehicle we've donated to NOPD, with not just NOPD markings, but DoD markings, so our stakeholders can see their money at work. We've had a good run of success, even through COVID, as I have said, in the 600, 900, 1,000 blocks with upper floor redevelopment. This is a project we've talked to Planning Commission staff about on a number of occasions, and it has really taken root. When we started upper floor development on Canal Street, we started with 2 million square feet of underutilized and unutilized space on Canal Street. Now we've put into commerce about 3/4 of that space, which is pretty astounding. We continue. I just actually left another Zoom call with Tulane and the administration, the city administration, and Greater New Orleans Foundation to discuss. Thank you, Paul, for keeping up with me here. By the way, I haven't been very good at prompting you. I assume that's Paul, but we think now is the year, in conjunction with the substantial improvements that we at the DoD are going to pay for in conjunction with the city in stormwater management. This is the year to jump into, pardon the pun, into with both feet Duncan Plaza as both a stormwater detention facility, which can hold, we think, in the area of 7 million gallons of stormwater, and then building a beautiful new park on top of it. So we've seen some outstanding leadership from Tulane University, who many of you know has made a strong commitment to downtown, and particularly to that part of downtown. and are having some really productive conversations with the administration and with our other partners on that project. And we're expecting to see some impressive movement, I hope, in 2021. In addition to this, we've continued to work with RTA, with the Regional Planning Commission on projects like the New Links program, which I know you all are familiar with, which will create, we think, one of the most reliable and effective transit systems that we've seen in New Orleans in a long, long time. We've, of course, been just a small part of that picture, but we hope an important part, working with, like I said, the partners RTA and RPC and the city and many other partners on that. The other thing that we continue to keep in focus is the need for a downtown transit terminal. We have really abysmal conditions for folks who are riding transit downtown right now. We know we need an indoor facility with things like, as I say tongue-in-cheek, crazy modern amenities like air conditioning and water fountains and the like. And so we've got, I think we've got a really outstanding coalition now with, of course, RTA at the lead on this, to create the kind of downtown terminal that the city and the riders really need. So those are just a few of the things we've been working on in 2020. I want to jump to some of our objectives in 2021 for just a few minutes. We continue at the DDD on the cleaning side to focus on continuous quality improvement. We do not rest on our laurels. And last year, we noticed that the sidewalks, particularly in the Canal Street corridor, could be a little cleaner. So we completely revamped how we address sidewalk cleaning, particularly the pressure washing in those blocks, and have seen, if you walk out to Canal Street today, I think you will agree, a marked improvement there. We're going to continue our community programming in Legacy Park. Like you see on the screen here, expanding and improving the quality of parks and open space based on what our stakeholders tell us is a major priority for our downtown stakeholders, no matter who they are. The hoteliers think it's important because people who come here with dogs need a place to take their dog. And not all these parks are dog friendly. I just want to be upfront about that. Our downtown residents need a place to take kids. Folks who don't live downtown, don't maybe not work downtown, but are close to downtown, they need a place to bring kids to high quality play spaces. All that we think can be accomplished at Duncan Plaza. But once again, Legacy Park is where right now, because we've got it up and running, where we're putting a lot of emphasis in programming, wellness programming, cultural programming and the like. So please pay attention to everything that we've got going there. Kia Marshall, our park programming lead, has been doing an outstanding job on that. And once again, I invite you all to come out and enjoy some of that. We in the Planning Commission staff in particular have we've had dozens of conversations, I'm sure, over the years about improving the pedestrian, the quality of the pedestrian environment and the bike environment downtown. We continue to work with the city on its Complete Streets initiative downtown, and will do so in 2021. And just taking off on what I mentioned before with the $2.5 million that we will put into stormwater management features, that equates to 19 blocks, both sides, of basically hollowing out parking lanes, filling them with stone, which of course creates a void, covering over the top with permeable pavement, and creating natural detention for water that otherwise would be above ground downtown. At the same time, increasing the size of drain lines while the city's in the ground doing this work. And we think this is an excellent first step, not the end step. Like I said, Duncan Plaza and other things offer really substantial opportunities for even greater improvements. But now we have taken the first step, the DED and the city together, to improve quality of life downtown. None of us likes walking through sidewalks. Nobody certainly likes to have water in buildings. And I'm really happy that this new CA with the city is going to allow us to take the first steps in that direction of improving quality of life in the pedestrian environment downtown in that way. I mentioned before our focus on housing the homeless downtown. We've helped to stand up all sorts of other programs, assisted outpatient treatment for the severely mentally ill, and we're going to continue that work. One of the things that we will be doing in 2021 is identifying our top 10 folks in need of services who are homeless downtown, and giving them even more intensive outreach to try to get them off the streets. What we find is sort of the Pareto principle with folks who are homeless or folks who are in need in general, is that 20% of the individuals take up 80% of the resources. So the idea is to try to get those who are most in need housed as quickly as possible to free up those resources to help others. I mentioned before some of the great improvements we've seen on upper floor development on Canal Street. We see, unfortunately, moving into 2021, there's going to be a need on Canal Street and in other places for even more intensive effort on new retail attraction to fill some spaces that unfortunately will become vacant. We have a good plan to do that. We have plans for making spaces look more attractive until they can be occupied with attractive storefront, temporary storefronts and so forth. Obviously, something that we need to work closely with the Planning Commission on. So those are things that we'll be working on to help us recover as we move forward. The other thing, and I will end with this. I think that COVID in New Orleans in particular points out the challenge that we as a city have that some other cities, many other cities, do not have, and that is that we are overly dependent on tourism and hospitality. The DD for a long time, and most of y'all probably know this, has been active in trying to build off of our existing assets, our medical district, our cultural and our artistic resources. These are things that by investing in them, what is already here, we're not in danger of that investment then somehow picking up and leaving sometime down in the future because there's a better offer somewhere else, so to speak. We see that sort of thing all the time in economic development. If we invest in our own academic medical research, for instance, in the state of Louisiana, that is an investment that will stay here, that will continue to develop those intellectual resources that will pay dividends for years and years to come. Jim Richardson has taken a look at our proposal that we have shopped to the legislature and to others at the state that would invest over 10 years, $200 million in academic medical research that involves collaborative efforts between Louisiana institutions. Dr. Richardson tells us that if we do that as a state, after 12 years, that all that investment will have been paid back to the state coffers, and we will then from that point be driving brand new, net new tax revenue into the state coffers. This is the kind of thing that we need to double down on in 2021 and in future years. And the second part of this is, I think, Paul, this may be on the next slide, is the Breakthrough Coalition focused on creative industries, working with Cano and other partners on this in order to come up with a strategic plan that focuses on these very local resources that will not move to other places, that will stay here, that will continue to create more tax revenue, more jobs, and more wealth for our community. But we do as a city, we still do not have a plan for doing this. And that's something that the DD is already invested heavily in 2020 with Cano and other partners. And in 2021, we expect to have that work done, that strategic plan done, after a lot of community and partner involvement, so that we can then implement a plan to invest once again in ourselves to drive new areas of our economy to greater heights. I will end there and ask Anthony to just express to you how some of this, or to share with you how some of this is expressed in the actual numbers. Thank you.
So good afternoon, commissioners. First of all, thank you all for having us this afternoon. This is my 14th opportunity to share our budget information with you all. It is probably, no, not probably, it's definitely the most difficult budget that we've had to do. It is under circumstances that we could not have possibly foreseen. As Kurt mentioned initially, in the fall of this year, in about August, September, we learned that the valuations on properties downtown were being reduced by 32% overall. And as Paul said, 98% of our revenues come from the ad valorem taxes that are based upon those valuations. So we found ourselves in a position where we had to make some very difficult decisions while continuing to maintain the mission of the Downtown Development District. We found the solution to be really three-pronged. We needed to increase the amount of revenue by $1 million to cover our commitment to the infrastructure CEA, the stormwater CEA that Kurt just mentioned. And because we had done that $1 million for the year 2020 out of reserves that no longer existed now, we opted to raise the millage to cover exactly that $1 million that was needed to fulfill that obligation, because our stakeholders had made it clear that was a significant project that they were fully behind and fully wanted implemented as we had agreed to last year. But even after that, after increasing the millage to cover that, we had to do approximately $1.5 million in cuts. Primarily that came from elimination of any increases for any of our staff. It came from elimination of all DDD events, meaning our holiday lighting, our holiday parade, our reindeer run, all of that has been canceled, both for this year and for 2021. We also had to cancel our awards program for next year. And our sponsorship of a number of other events, which we support downtown, will not exist next year either. That still was not sufficient. We are having to reduce our total staff by 10%. We're doing a reduction in force of 10% of our staff. And we did that in a strategic manner by identifying the areas where we may be able to or should be able to make up the efforts and continue to perform as we have in the past. We have also eliminated things such as any travel, any staff development. So we're moving forward with making sure that we're able to continue doing what we need to do, but it has required us to make some drastic cuts. That still is not enough. The third prong of what we're doing is we're seeking some debt financing. We're seeking approximately $1.75 million in bond or line of credit financing for 2021 and anticipating a need for that same amount in 2022. We do believe that come 2023 and beyond, we will have sufficient funding to cover debt service on that, especially as some of our other commitments reach the end of their term. So overall, 1.75 million in debt, 1.5 million in cuts, and an increase of $1 million in the millage will allow us to continue the programming we've been doing, to continue our support for public space cleanliness and beautification, for public safety, and for economic development. In terms of public safety, because all of our stakeholders have made that a high priority, have stated that public safety is one of the things we've done really well, that they want us to continue. We have maintained all of our public safety operations with the exception of potentially our daytime private security coverage. Right now, we have found the funding to continue with our private security detail in the warehouse district primarily and in the arts district, at least in the evenings and on the weekends. So our goal is that we have our contingency of public safety elements out there still, and that they're still continuing to perform. I think that largely covers the changes for 2021. We thank you all for always being supportive and for understanding that what we work with and what we accomplish are really done on behalf of not only downtown, but on behalf of the entire city.
Thank you so much. Kurt and Anthony, thank you for an amazing presentation. Do you have anything else to add, Kurt?
Just one thing, and thank you, Madam Chair. These were all difficult decisions, of course. But what we knew is that coming out of COVID, we needed to maintain the quality of life on the streets. And so none of our clean team that people see working diligently, if you're like I am, every time you're downtown, you'll see 2 or 3 of them working. They will all be retained. All of our public safety rangers who fulfill a critical mission, and all of our police officers. So we were able to somehow craft a budget that maintains those critical on the streets services that people see day in and day out, because we know that that is an important part of making people feel comfortable coming back downtown as we recover from COVID. So that, along with the economic development and the communications campaign, they all work together in order to, we hope, and we really do believe, put us in the best position to recover from COVID. So thank you.
Thank you. And I will say that your ability to continuously and consistently improve on the downtown development district does not go unnoticed. So thank you for your work and your group. Are there any comments from any other commissioners? Questions? No? Okay. With that, we will be going out for recess, 30 minutes to allow for public comment. I believe, Paul, there'll be a link or there's some information available for people to make comments as necessary, correct?
That's right. Once we go to recess, we will put on the screen instructions on how to submit public comments during the recess.
Excellent. Thank you. So now I'll be looking for a motion from the commissioners for a 30-minute recess.
So moved, Commissioner Stieg.
Seconded, Commissioner Lund.
Thank you. Moved by Commissioner Stieg, second by Commissioner Lund for a 30-minute recess, resuming at 3:20. I'll call to order. Commissioner Brown?
Yes.
Commissioner Flick, yes. Commissioner Lund?
Yes.
Commissioner Marshall?
Yes.
Commissioner Mobley?
Yes.
Commissioner Stieg?
Yes.
Commissioner Weidberg? Commissioner Weidberg? And Commissioner Wittry?
Yes.
Thank you. We will resume at 3:20. think we'll get started in just a minute. We're waiting for comments. Is staff ready to begin?
Yes. Council, do I need to say roll call again?
We need to do a roll call to come back to make sure that we have a quorum.
Thank you. Okay, we'll begin the meeting. We'll do roll call. Commissioner Brown.
Here.
Commissioner Flick, present. Sorry.
Lunn.
I'm not there yet. Commissioner, here we go. Commissioner Marshall.
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Mobley.
Here.
Commissioner Stieg.
Here.
Mr. Weber.
Present.
And Commissioner Witry. Commissioner Witry. Did you say present?
Yes, present.
Thank you. Are there any comments for zoning docket 8220?
No, there are not.
Stephen, do you want to give a recap?
For the staff recommendation is approval with 1 waiver and 11 provisos.
Are there any comments or a motion from commissioners for zoning docket 8220?
Do we have to comment about the traffic plan that is needing to be adjusted?
I think staff confirmed that we could go with the latest traffic plan rule as opposed to the proviso 9F.
Yes, the council passed that already, so.
Yeah. Looking for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve zoning docket 082-20 with 1 waiver, 11 provisos, and to adopt the latest traffic plan that the council had adopted.
Is there a second?
I'll second that motion.
Is that Commissioner Mobley? Yes. Thank you. So Commissioner Witry motions to approve zoning docket 8220 subject to 1 waiver and 11 provisos, replacing proviso 9F with the latest traffic rules that were approved by City Council, seconded by Commissioner Mobley. I'll call the, are there any further discussion? Hearing none. Commissioner Brown?
Yes. Yes.
Commissioner Flick? Yes. Commissioner Lunn?
Yes.
Commissioner Marshall?
Yes.
Commissioner Mobley?
Yes.
Commissioner Stieg?
Yes.
Commissioner Weber?
Yes.
Commissioner Witry?
Yes.
Motion passes. Move on to the next one. Zoning docket 8320.
All right, we have several comments on this. First is by Maxwell Giardulo, 1340 Poydras Street, Suite 710, New Orleans, representing the Louisiana Fair Housing Action Center, paid representative in support of the application. The Louisiana Fair Housing Action Center continues to strongly support this amendment to the CZO and appreciates the staff's thorough response to the concerns about university districts and short-term rentals. Their reports make clear there are a few of these buildings in the university districts, and they are not the problem. They have also shown that our STR regulations requiring owners to live on the property in residential districts will prevent speculation by STR investors. The real issue at hand is whether we will continue to move forward with this exclusionary zoning policies or start down a new path. Single-family zoning was designed as a racist end-around that 1917 Supreme Court decision that struck down zoning explicitly by race. It delivered the same results, but it was upheld because it didn't say the racist part out loud. New Orleans had its own unconstitutional racist zoning law struck down in 1927. However, we have continued with zoning practices that generally have the same result. Our city is deeply segregated now, even more than we were before Katrina. Among the tools in this segregation toolbox we have regularly employed are downzoning huge swaths of the city, reducing density and height restrictions, capitulating to NIMBY neighbors who consistently oppose affordable developments in wealthy or gentrifying neighborhoods. Cities and states across the country are considering bold steps to undo these past practices by eliminating single-family zoning. What's before you today is the tiniest of baby steps in comparison. There is nothing controversial about letting a fourplex be used as a fourplex. As the CPC stated, this is not new. It is a restoration of use that likely preceded most current residents. If we're ever going to undo the segregation and inequality of our city, we must repudiate the idea that fourplexes are somehow degrading to a neighborhood and reject the notion that certain neighborhoods deserve to be protected from them. I urge you to support the staff recommendations so that we can stop perpetuating segregation and create the foundation for neighborhoods that are open to all. Next comment is from Andronica Morris, 4640 South Carrollton Avenue, Suite 160, New Orleans. In support of this application, on behalf of the Greater New Orleans Housing Alliance, we ask the City Planning Commission to support this zoning docket. GNOHA was formed in 2007 to help developers and community development organizations rebuild New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina's floodwaters devastated the city. GNOHA's development organizations committed to rebuilding in an ethical manner which would address the generational problems that were highlighted by Katrina. Now, GNOHA members support the implementation of Housing NOLA, a 10-year plan in order to ensure that New Orleans is equitable and that we end housing insecurity. The COVID pandemic has worsened the affordable housing crisis that has affected almost half the people of New Orleans. One of the simplest and easiest ways to increase the supply of housing is to establish and expand fourplexes in New Orleans. This kind of multifamily housing is essential to undoing the racist foundation of our current housing system is built upon. The 2020 Housing NOLA report card found that over 50,000 low-income workers, many being essential workers inside this pandemic, are unable to live in New Orleans despite being employed here. For many, this is not a choice, but a lack of opportunity. We applaud this effort and urge all public officials to put housing first by seeking ways to create and sustain affordable housing, especially for our vulnerable populations and essential workers who keep us safe and make this city all that we've come to know and love today. Next is comment by Lois Adams, 700 North Galvez Street, apartment 305, New Orleans, representing herself and GNOHA in support of the application. As a native New Orleanian, I am concerned about the lack of affordable housing for our vulnerable and these working low-wage necessary jobs for our tourism economy-based city. Continue efforts towards alleviating affordable housing by allowing more fourplexes and duplexes to be built. Next is from Ben Allen, 3328 Bank Street, in support of the application. I would like to wholeheartedly voice my support for the proposed amendment to the CZO and applaud its effort to remove extensive time and cost burdens that prohibited redevelopment of our historic housing stock, what was previously understood to be a correct and valuable use of urban residential development. The term missing middle refers to the type of housing product in between a traditional single-family home and a large-scale apartment building, a formerly very common type. It fell victim to post-war zoning ordinances that sought to separate all urban uses in favor of a now outmoded preference for suburban development density and auto-oriented expansion. The legalization of the missing middle housing that in the past was so crucial to the economic success of homeowners and renters is sorely needed. Work on these buildings is further inhibited by footprint limitations, which create overly rigorous constraints in working with the existing building stock that may need to be altered for improvements for things like accessibility or simply structural stabilization. Density yard, and open space requirements already provide constraints that prevent flagrant abuse of expansion provisions by developers. The CZO should make it easier for homeowners in these times of increasing property values and living costs to allow these properties to be renovated in a way that generates value for them, while also providing some relief to a rental market which is currently rely mostly on expensive new construction to catch up to a demand which it seriously lags behind. Until this is corrected, low and middle income demand for reasonable, convenient living conditions in the city will continue to be seriously underserved by what is able to be constructed new and affordably, particularly in the current market. Next comment is from John Sullivan, 643 Magazine Street, representing Enterprise Community Partners in support of the application. We appreciate the thoughtfulness and time with which the City Planning Commission staff has approached the issue and asked the commissioners to approve their recommendations. Although called, quote, non-conforming homes, these are homes that have conformed to their neighborhoods for decades. These are homes that have fit perfectly into the fabric of their surroundings and are part of the historical neighborhood character of New Orleans. They are technically, quote, non-conforming because of the downzoning of the commission and council have engaged in through the years. This is a great opportunity for the commission to make a simple change that will allow more homes to come online. We ask that you approve the staff's recommendations. Thank you. Next, from Chunlin Leonard, 1414 Audubon Street, would like to provide or request information regarding this application. Thank you to the CPC staff for taking the time to consider neighbors' concerns. Unfortunately, the CPC recommendations remain substantially the same and still fail to consider the market dynamics in neighborhoods like the Uptown University area, where strong demand distorts the incentives in favor of multifamily units for profit maximization. Even though the revised CPC report acknowledges that the university area interim zoning district, D2D IZD, would deter the kind of rampant conversion to existing multifamily developments, page 50, it ignores the fact that D2D IZD was only intended as a temporary solution valid for 1 year, designed to win some time for further studies. The report nonetheless rejects the use of an overlay district to deter rampant EMDs in the Uptown University area. The CPC report also seeks to justify its recommendation and allow expansion of existing building footprint by stating that the expansion will allow developers to modernize amenities, add bathrooms or laundry and bedrooms. The report ignores the market reality that the developers in the Uptown University area are always reducing common areas such as living and kitchen areas to squeeze in additional bedrooms. The more bedrooms a building has, the more rent it generates. This is the nature of the profit-driven model. As the debate goes on, the purchasing frenzy continues in the Uptown University area, most likely in anticipation of the proposed relaxation of the EMD rules. If the City Council adopts the CPC staff recommendations without any meaningful limits, you will change forever the character of the Uptown University area neighborhood and other neighborhoods facing similar market dynamics without creating a single unit of affordable housing. Is this really what the City of New Orleans wants? Next is from Nicole Weber, 2131 Bienville Street, in support of the application. In my experience, there are many historically multifamily properties that are 3 and 4 units with at least one of the units occupied by full-time residential tenants and or owners. However, because the underlying zoning district does not allow for 3 or 4 unit residential buildings, when the property was renovated after Katrina, only 2 units were able to be renovated. In most cases, the property owner was forced to file a change of use from multifamily to 2-family in order to get a building permit. Essentially, they had to forfeit their legal non-conforming use in order to renovate any of the units. 15 years later, these buildings sit vacant and gutted units that present an opportunity for affordable housing. Typically, when we file a legal non-conforming use application or request verification of the multi-family housing, that we submit copies of past and present leases to prove the legal non-conforming use through occupancy. The leases often prove that the redevelopment of these historically multifamily buildings are providing affordable housing either through below market rents or subsidized lease agreements. Existing 3, 4, and 5 unit houses are an opportunity for new affordable housing units to become available in a very short period of time because the cost of construction to renovate them is much less than new construction or conversion of another type of use into residential. Should this be adopted by the City Council, we will see an immediate opportunity for locals to offer newly renovated and code-compliant units for affordable rents in our historic urban and historic core neighborhoods that are close to public transportation, schools, jobs, parks, and businesses. The more units we have available, the more advantageous it will be for our residents or displaced residents seeking affordable housing options. Next, from Katie Swartout, 2820 South Saratoga Street, in support of the application. I fully support the city's recommendations. As the city has pointed out, it takes on average 2 years from submitting a completed application for a conditional use to being able to apply for a building permit. This is insupportable for a person trying to timely update or renovate a structure. Homeowners do not have the time, money, or energy to bring their current units up to present code, a problem that this provision to the CZO will help remedy. No longer will renters be forced to live in unsafe, subpar conditions due to their landlord's hands being tied. Next, from Robert Abelson, 621 Broadway, in support of the application. As a former student who fell in love with the city and now calls it home, I think something got cut off there. I will say the city needs to think long-term about its housing shortage. This requires more adaptability and allowing additional supply. Next, from Gustavo Romero, 2600 General Pershing, in support of the application. I agree with the city's recommendations. This will be beneficial. Thank you for taking the time to make this crucial amendment to the CZO. Next, from Alan Johnson, 1418 Charters, representing FMIA, in support of the application. We are in support of the desire to bring housing to our neighborhood, which feels as if it is being hollowed out by a tourism industry and NIMBYism. We request that STRs be banned in these properties that are converted back to multifamily housing. The staff report commented on the current STR rules and how it is impossible STRs could be limited or contained in these properties. While that may be true theoretically, those of us who live in Marigny know how difficult it is to verify and enforce what occurs inside a building, which is what the current rules entail. We are also aware how stretched the enforcement staff is and how stretched they will be with budget cuts coming to every city department. Also, the staff report discouraged a prohibition against STRs as it would be an inconsistency in zoning, which is discouraged. However, that ignores the reality that the Marigny is the victim of one of the greatest inconsistencies in the CZO. The French Quarter has a moratorium on STRs, except for 7 blocks of Bourbon, while there are no limitations once you cross Esplanade. This egregious inconsistency makes clear how the city values their neighborhood and how the citizens have displaced by STRs. We urge you to ban STRs in these properties to assure that an initiative for housing serve that goal and not become an STR expansion bill. Next, from Robert Abelson, 621 Broadway, in support of the application. I support this motion. Next, from Alex Britton, 1025 Lower Line, in support of the application. We support this motion. Next, from Frank Tessier, 2341 Camp Street, in opposition to the application. As written, the ordinance will allow single-family residences in single-family neighborhoods to reconvert homes into multifamily. During the Depression, many of the larger homes were split up into multifamily and boarding houses. Years later, when the city recovered, they were all converted back to single-family. So a developer can buy an old house, then change it from single-family into multifamily. It occurs in the Garden District, Irish Channel, or Lower Garden District, or near the corridor, where the majority of such homes are located. It may create more housing, but it will be expensive housing. More important, it will destabilize single-family zones and neighborhoods because excess parking and garbage pickup and noise will stress the neighborhoods, pushing single families into the suburbs. No one wants to buy a single-family resident and then have their neighbor converted to a fourplex. In the long run, this will affect property values and property taxes and the city's revenues. Next, from Shelley Landrew, 5329 Dryad Street, representing the Garden District Association, in opposition to the application. While we appreciate the intent of the text change, we believe that as written, it will lead to unintended consequences in parts of the city where it is not needed for revitalization. Please accept the following suggested comments on the amendments to the proposed ordinance regarding multifamily dwellings. The Garden District neighborhood has had a number of 19th and early 20th century homes that were originally built as single family or doubles that were converted most during the Depression or other times into boarding houses or multifamily units. Many, if not most, of these homes have now been renovated back to single family or a less intense use. The suggested language referencing documented legal history would put these homes at risk and open the door future conversions back to a more intensive use, despite the fact that the original structure was never intended to be put to such use as multifamily. We recommend modifying the amendment to read only properties with a documented legal history as originally constructed or as a two or multifamily dwelling. We also take exception to allowing a single into a fourplex apartment or condo without the necessary parking required. We hope you will consider the above changes to the amendment for inclusion in your recommendation of the City Council for the passage of the final ordinance. Next, from Keith Hardy, 18 Audubon Street, in opposition to the application. Staff claims that established multifamily is not related to the doubles to dormitories. To the contrary, the D2D developers are submitting comments supporting the established multifamily. At the last hearing, a comment was submitted by Robert Abelson, the founder of Amicus Properties, a New York developer with a number of D2D properties in the university area. Like the staff, Abelson claims, quote, "There is no objective evidence that student apartments in the university area are impacting affordable housing," end quote. Amicus rents bedrooms for as much as $1,500 a month, earning $12,000 a month rent for an 8-bedroom shotgun double. Despite his crocodile tears for affordable housing, Abelson is not creating affordable units and sees established multifamily as just another way to fatten his wallet by cramming 16 bedrooms onto a 30-foot lot. Abelson and other developers clearly believe the established multifamily, as it will be used in the university area, is a moneymaker. They are buying up properties currently renting below market, increasing the number of units and bedrooms, and renting them out far above market. Established multifamily, as it will operate in the university area, is not only going to not create affordable housing, it is going to eliminate affordable housing. Please protect the university area by amending the proposal to A, require overlays for the university area, B, require conditional use hearing for the university area, C, prohibit expansions of EMFs, and D, prohibit increases in the number of bedrooms. Next, from S.P. Johnson, 2822 La Page Street, New Orleans. Would like to provide or request information regarding this application. The good purpose of motion M2279 is to provide affordable housing for working New Orleanians. It must be accompanied by a concerted effort to ensure a living wage for workers. On the other hand, many of us fear the unintended consequences of this text amendment to the CZO, that the increased opportunities for development afforded by this amendment will actually and finally benefit the developers of short-term rentals and developers who convert two-family dwellings to private dormitories for college students or D2Ds. Short-term rentals have depleted the housing stock available to New Orleanians. It has helped to create a residential housing shortage we have in New Orleans today. Will this legislation, paradoxically, intensify the trend? Please take this into consideration in your deliberations. And the final comment from Alan Harden, 3203 Britannia Street, New Orleans, would like to provide or request information regarding the application. I live in the neighborhood, a neighborhood with homes that in the past were converted into boarding houses and dense usages via chopping up singles and doubles for increased density that was out of sync with the larger surrounding area. I am concerned with the legal history wording in the amendment is too broad and will allow for a return of the inappropriate intense usage of many older homes. Thank you. That's the last comment.
Thank you. Commissioners, do you have any questions or comments or motion?
Do we have a deadline on this?
Yes.
Sorry, it's Commissioner Brown. I had to leave for a couple of minutes. I did read the comments. Do we have a deadline on this?
Yes. Deadline is December 26th.
Thank you.
Staff, can you just walk me back through, I'm reading the documents in a couple of different places. Walk me back through the explanation of documented legal history. So I know in the past there has been some, once we get past the 6 months, some differentiation on separate, lines for gas and water, former double, like just walk me through what that looks like, because I'm reading the document, but just help me understand so it's just on the record.
So Dean, you want to get that?
Sure. So Article 25 of the CZO applies a general rule to non-conforming uses of all kinds that says if it lapses in use, and in the case of a dwelling, occupancy for more than 180 days, that legal nonconformity is removed, and therefore the process for reestablishing its use then defers to what is authorized through the CZO. So this text amendment would allow any dwelling, an established multifamily dwelling with less than 5 units, to continue to operate without having to go through the conditional use process, or if it's not permitted as a conditional use, a rezoning. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, so I'm just trying to make sure, because I know because of it's been part of the discussion, because of the conversions, there are former doubles that we're going to have had out of service as doubles, and there's 30-year and 50-year, there's different things in terms of tenure as those doubles or the like discussed. So I just want to be clear, the path gets easier to go back and show that at some point in history, this was a multifamily double or more, double, triple, or quad, correct?
Yes, and the updated use standards will require safety and permits to look at the conditions, the physical conditions that exist on the property currently. So if there is a scenario where there were 6 units and 2 removed and converted to a 4-plex, then only those 4 units would be able to come back.
Can I follow up on Commissioner Weidberg's line of questions? Is under the new language, would any use in the past, a structure has existed for 80 years and 4 years of it was multifamily and the rest of the time was not? Is that established multifamily use because it existed, albeit for 5% of the time?
So we've changed the use standards since the last meeting to state that the units must currently exist. So if they had been 6 units converted back down to 4, they couldn't go back up to 6 because.
And if they were a single family, if they were a 4-plex converted to single family and presently single, or a 4-plex converted to a double, presently a double, the maximum they can do is what they are now?
That's the way that the standards are written now. That was one of the concerns we wanted to address when we requested the deferral from the last meeting.
Good, okay.
I would also add, as some of the comments suggest, there is a need for these units. And so, historically, when units have been added to accommodate housing needs, we see that as demand for different types of housing that are part of our historic fabric that are also very much in need right now due to COVID and economic hardship.
So if I can ask one more question. So I heard your explanation about why STRs wouldn't be an issue, but then I heard a couple of comments that are concerned about it. And I still don't totally understand why it wouldn't be. Pick an area, University/Carrollton area, for example. We're trying to promote affordable housing. We're not trying to promote STRs or doubles to dormitories where the rent is $1,500 a room. I mean, that's not what we're trying to do. So
Sure.
How are we avoiding, one of the comments used the word unintended consequences, but how are we avoiding that to be a loophole somebody can take advantage of?
So with the short-term rentals, in using the example of the HURD2 district, which is in the main residential district in the university area, the the CZO only allows small short-term rentals in that area, which could be a 2-family dwelling, owner occupied, or a 3 or 4 unit dwelling that also has to be owner occupied. Also, they're limited to 1 unit, whether you are a double, triple, or fourplex. So whether it's single or 2-family, 3-family, or 4-family, you can only have 1 short-term rental on the lot, and it has to be owner occupied.
Okay, that's what you okay. And then in terms of the doubles to dormitories, so that I do remember that from Sydney's earlier comments. So that takes care of the STR issue. And what about the doubles to dormitory issue?
So like the name states, the issue is happening with both. Can happen with doubles. It can go up. You can have up to 4 unrelated individuals in a dwelling. And so what is happening often is that the developer might have 4 different leases for each of its 4 bedrooms, and they do renovate them and maybe provide a bathroom in each bedroom so that the students or whomever the renters are getting some amenities for that increased rent in most cases. But that's something that can happen now, except the IZD now requires that if you are adding any bedrooms, you have to provide 1 parking space for each bedroom.
So let's say we have a non-conforming 4-plex that's really in a zoned smaller, and it's existing now, and it meets, so therefore it meets and it historically has documentation, et cetera. So it's a 4-plex, and each place has 2 bedrooms. I'm trying to figure out if somebody is allowed to have the 4-plex there, then they can put, but the 4-plex has 2 bedrooms in each unit, then they can put up to 4 people in each of the units of the 4-plex, because it's by unit, 4 unrelated people per unit, right? So then they could put 16 people in that building, whereas this measure is really trying to put 4 affordable housing families in that unit, not 16 unrelated college kids.
Correct. That, as written, the standards would allow the expansion of the footprint within zoning setbacks and height limits. Our reason on that is to allow for modernization of units, to add bathrooms or laundries or even bedrooms. In most parts of the city, the student housing or D2Ds is not an issue. I can tell you that one of the reasons the city council did send this back a second time is that they wrote the motion a little bit differently in order to allow for their consideration of an overlay that could exclude a particular from either allowing the expansion of the established multifamily or to still require a conditional use in a certain area.
So it seems that you all have closed some of the other loopholes that we were concerned about. Is there any way to close that loophole?
So I think the IZD keeps it closed for the time being, which IZD will last a year and it can be renewed for another year after that. We're not certain that that this step would exacerbate the problem because it is happening with doubles already, which is an allowed use. And we believe that there are other remedies to dealing with student housing, perhaps by allowing more density in a certain area around the university where more housing could be built, more multifamily housing that could provide that need. The students are going to live somewhere, and there's not enough housing on campus. So, we believe that there is an unmet need that that perhaps one of the main solutions would be allowing more multifamily housing in certain areas near the university, and that could help alleviate the conversion of existing doubles to dormitories or expansion of doubles.
Can I, oh, go ahead, Sue.
How many properties in the university area are legally non-conforming multifamily? What number of properties approximately are we talking about?
There, to my knowledge, is not data to answer that question because most nonconformities are determined when they come through the 7th floor of City Hall. So someone reports a violation or a zoning inspector picks up on it, but there isn't a clean data set on housing types that is geo-referenced.
Are you referring to ones that have come in and asked for a non-conforming use determination? I think safety and permits might be able to provide that. We don't have anybody here, but they do formal non-conforming use determinations, so that data is available. We just don't have it right now. We can get it from them though.
And there is a map on page 21 of the staff report that shows the conditional use applications we've considered in the last 5 years. I'm looking at it now. There have been none in the university area that have come through the conditional use process. And then there is an additional map on the request for non-conforming use determinations on page 9 of the staff report. Where there appear to be 6 or 7.
Yes. Thank you. 0 and 7 were my count as well.
Staff, I want to go back to because I thought I had it, and then Mr. Stieg asked a question that I just want to clarify. So current condition units, I'm great with. What I'm curious about is something that is been converted to a single and has been such for a while. So current owner, maybe even the person they bought it from, conversion predates all of that. So how easy is it going to be for a person with a single to convert that back into a double when it's pretty clear because of the housing stock that it at one time functioned as a double?
Well, if it was it would have to be a single family district for the 2-family dwelling to be non-conforming, but it has to be it has to currently exist according to the way we've written the use standards.
Has to currently exist. Okay.
And it has to have legally existed as well.
Okay.
Paul, I have a question. There was some background noise when you were answering Commissioner Stieg's questions about how we can limit the broader application of the D2Ds that are of concern in the university area and how we are going to, there was a council action you mentioned. Can you go back?
That's the interim zoning district, which came through the City Planning Commission over the summer. And so that's in place for, say, another 9 or 10 months. They can renew that for 2 additional 6 months periods for another year into 2022. And so during that period, if you were to add a bedroom within this IZD area, you're required to add a parking space. And generally that probably won't be possible for very many unless they somehow lift the house.
But if this text amendment goes through, and once the IZD is done, these doubles to dorms could continue to proliferate at the risk of losing the affordable housing we're seeking to. I'm not sure what happens after that. Is there a scenario?
Yes. Oh, go ahead, Sydney.
So the non-conforming use determination from data from the last 5 years demonstrates that there are several non-conforming dwellings operating legally in the Uptown or University area currently. The concern that I hear from residents about proliferation of D2Ds and their inaffordability comes from the renovation of the structure. It's very likely that many of these legally non-conforming structures that have been operating are continuing to provide more reasonable rents because they're older housing stock and they aren't necessarily operating as doubles to dormitories or structure or dwellings in this niche housing market, just because they are multifamily structures.
These developments are simply adding bedrooms and not meters and kitchens. So they're not technically adding, it's not now a fourplex, it's still a double. It's just a double with 4 bedrooms or 2 bedrooms or whatever it is on each side. So, you know, how do we as a commission regulate that? I don't think we can regulate someone who's just adding another bedroom. I think the interim zoning district of the parking space makes sense, but I don't think we can dictate how many bedrooms you can add to a single or a double if it's all under a single quote unquote unit. Any other comments? Any
I'm
motion?
prepared to make a motion to approve staff's recommendation. I do feel like there are planning tools in place to address some of the concerns that the commissioners have brought into play here. I'm also concerned that if we don't approve this, we're taking a lot of staff resources to actually work on applications when we're experiencing quite a large budget deficit as well. So my recommendation is going to be to move forward with zoning docket 083-20.
Second that motion, Commissioner Lund.
Commissioner Lund seconds. Any discussion?
So the motion is to go along with the staff's recommendation.
Correct.
So is there any possibility that this there's further room for tweaking this text amendment out of any comments that arose today?
At the council level. Is that your question?
No, at this level, since we're not quite, we have I guess another month, but not much longer. I mean, I don't want to belabor something if we're at the point where we've exhausted all planning tools to, you know, to take care of the concerns that are real, but I see that some of the community people are, you know, worried about.
As I mentioned earlier, that the council came back with this motion and specifically mentioned overlays. And there could be an overlay to prohibit either the expansion of the units within an overlay or still require a conditional use within an overlay area. We've considered that already, and we don't recommend it, but that's
Okay.
something that could be done.
All right, I got it. Paul, thank you very much.
Are there any other discussion?
I guess I'm sorry, Sue, go ahead.
I just want to thank staff for taking so much time working at a really granular level with a number of neighborhoods that have very different conditions and very different concerns to try to apply a blanket rule with the very blunt tool of zoning to things that require almost surgical precision. And I know how hard that work is. And I appreciate how much time you all have put in and how much patience you've shown through this process.
Here, I echo Commissioner Mobley's statement. We've often turned things away because it tries to do something citywide and we're worried about the ramifications. I think this was very thoughtfully done and not easily achieved. So congratulations, it's really well done.
Always. Thank you. I guess we are all in concert on that with our staff. It's comprehensive, thorough, thoughtful, and all of that. And I didn't mean to imply that there was something that was left out on. It was just out of these community concerns that I felt like we needed to at least ask the question. So thank you.
And I would just add that since I was kind of the skeptic that kept poking sticks at the staff, that I think you've closed all the loopholes that you possibly could and were receptive to our thoughts and comments last time. So I'm in favor of the motion. I think there are other ways to address the dormitories, doubles to dormitories issue. And I think in response to Commissioner Mobley's point that the number of units weren't as large as we might have worried about in the university area. But I think you've closed all the loopholes that you possibly could. So I'm in favor of the motion.
I am too. And I do also appreciate Sue mentioning the numbers. That was helpful also for anything that we might have missed, which is not likely.
Excellent. I'll call the question for approval, modified approval of a zoning docket 8320. Commissioner Brown?
Yes.
Commissioner Flick? Yes. Commissioner Lunn?
Yes.
Commissioner Marshall?
Yes.
Commissioner Mobley?
Yes.
Commissioner Steve?
Yes.
Commissioner Weidberg?
Yes.
Commissioner Witry?
Yes.
That motion passes. On to docket 9120. Are there any comments?
There are no comments, and the staff recommendation is approval with 4 provisos.
Is there any discussion or a motion?
I'll move to accept staff's approval, a recommendation at 091-20 with the 4 provisos.
Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Witry moves to approve zoning docket 9120 for approval with 4 provisos, seconded by Commissioner Lunn. Any discussion?
I'm sorry, I think that was seconded by not me.
Sorry, Commissioner Brown.
Who's Brown? That's fine.
I'll call the question. Commissioner Brown?
Yes.
Commissioner Flick? Yes. Commissioner Lunn?
Yes.
Commissioner Marshall?
Yes.
Commissioner Mobley?
Yes.
Commissioner Steve?
Yes.
Commissioner Weidberg?
Sorry, yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Witry?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes. Next zoning docket 9220.
There are no comments on 9220. The staff recommendation is approval with 8 provisos. A reminder that the applicant requested that one of the provisos be deleted, and that proviso required the removal of impervious parking kind of in a driveway or side area adjacent to the structure.
Are there any comments or questions?
Do we have, oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to make a motion, but if you get a question, go ahead.
Do we have documentation that it is a shared driveway? Or can we amend the provisos to say if there is a shared driveway, then that proviso would be removed?
You could certainly do the latter. You could condition the proviso on it, or you could self-destruct if it's a shared driveway.
Well, then I will make a motion to approve per staff's recommendation with the exception of eliminating proviso number 7, provided we have documentation that that is a shared driveway.
Thank you, Commissioner Brown. Anyone second?
Witry seconds.
Commissioner Witry. Commissioner Brown made a motion to approve docket 9220 20 for approval with 8 provisos with the exception of provision 7, removing that condition unless it is used as a drive.
Adding to that proviso that this proviso can be deleted if it can be proven that it's a shared driveway.
Thank you. It was seconded by Commissioner Witchery. Is there any discussion? If not, I'll call the question. Commissioner Brown?
Yes.
Commissioner Flick, yes. Commissioner Lunn?
Yes.
Commissioner Marshall?
Yes.
Commissioner Mobley?
Yes.
Commissioner Steed?
Yes.
Commissioner Weidberg?
Yes.
Commissioner Witchery?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes. Next docket, 9820. Subdivision docket 9820.
Well, I believe there are, the staff recommendation is approval with 1 waiver and 4 provisos, and I believe there are several public comments, Paul, if you're able to read them.
This is subdivision docket 7820?
7820.
Oh, yes. First comment is from Emmanuel Gillen, 4218 South Carrollton Avenue, apartment B, in support of this application. I'm Emmanuel Gillen, managing partner of Iris Development, Hano's partner in the development project that this subdivision request is a part of. Iris Development's strategy for the lots is seeking develop it on Cambron Street is to return the site layouts to contextual precedent, namely 30 by 100 lots. This will allow us to build smaller scale buildings, duplexes. We welcome the staff recommendation on the project and would like to assure CPC that we will take landscaping concerns into account, starting with a site layout design that prioritizes retaining the mature trees that are on site currently. We have already engaged an arborist for that purpose, in fact. We have solicited community input on the subdivision plan. The feedback was a preference for this perpendicular layout over 7 parallel lots side by side. We will, of course, solicit more feedback from the neighbors once we have the ability to move forward with the first draft of designs, which is contingent upon the approval of our subdivision plan. This engagement process will include, but not be limited to 106 review. Thank you for your consideration. And there's another comment from Amanda Fabin, 8610 Willow Street, New Orleans, in support of the application. My name is Amanda Fabin, and I recently moved to the Leonidas area 3 months ago with my young son. Although I now have my own piece of New Orleans, this city I have called home for my last 20 years, I am constantly reminded that affordable housing remains a necessity for many folks in our city. I believe that it should be a top priority for our communities to ensure that our fellow New Orleanians can remain, live, and grow right here, same as us, without being banished by ever-rising housing costs. For that reason, I support the application, and I hope that you will give the same consideration.
Paul, was there an earlier comment?
Comment, yes. Going back to Maxwell Girardulo, 1340 Poydras Street, Suite 710, representing Louisiana Fair Housing Action Center in support of the application. Louisiana Fair Housing Action Center strongly supports this development moving forward. Now more than ever, we need affordable housing in gentrifying high ground neighborhoods like Leonidas. Unfortunately, New Orleans has a long history of capitulating to neighborhood opposition and downsizing, delaying, or killing altogether mixed income or affordable developments in or adjacent to white neighborhoods. The most recent example was the Maisant Royal development in Bywater that faced coded racist opposition and far more review than the most market rate developments. It still hasn't received final approval because it was thrust into FEMA Section 106 review, where opponents consistently delay the process. What's before you is a very simple decision about the subdivision of property, and the CPC staff are crystal clear in their report that this development is consistent with the CZO, the master plan, and the general pattern of lots in the neighborhood. In fact, this subdivision will better fit into the neighborhood context than the fourplexes that were previously on these lots. We hope that opponents will not use every formal step in the land use process to derail these desperately needed affordable units, and we hope that you will stand up for working people and the regulations enshrined in our CZO and master plan. Thank you.
Madam Chair, can I interrupt? Sure. I need to recuse myself on this matter, so I apologize. I didn't have full information at the beginning, so I'd like to reflect that I'm going to recuse myself and I'm going to leave for this docket matter.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Any discussion or motion?
Motion to, this is Kyle, Commissioner Weidberg, motion to approve staff recommendation.
Thank you.
Second, Commissioner Lund.
Thank you. Commissioner Weidberg motions to approve zoning subdivision docket 7820, subject to 1 waiver and 4 provisos, seconded by Commissioner Lund. Any discussion?
I just want to compliment the fact that you came back and adjusted the way that the site laid and the lots laid based on the feedback you got at the PPP. It's exactly what it's designed to do. So thank you to the applicant for listening to the community and making this as workable as possible for everybody. It's good to hear that.
Thank you, Commissioner Weidberg. I'll call the question. Commissioner Brown?
Yes.
Commissioner Flick, yes. Commissioner Lund?
Yes.
Commissioner Marshall?
Yes.
Commissioner Mobley?
Yes.
Commissioner Sieg has recused himself. Commissioner Weidberg?
Yes.
And Commissioner Wittry?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes. Zoning docket 10820.
There are no public comments, and the staff recommendation is approval with 1 waiver and 3 provisos.
Thank you. Is there any discussion or a motion?
Commissioner Lund, I move for approval of subdivision docket 10820 as recommended by staff, tentative approval, subject to 1 waiver and 3 provisos.
Thank you, Commissioner Lund. Is there a second?
Wittry seconds.
Thank you, Commissioner Wittry. Commissioner Lund has motion to approve zoning docket 10820, subject to tentative approval with 1 waiver and 3 provisos, seconded by Commissioner Wittry. Are there any discussion? Is there any discussion? We'll call the question. Commissioner Brown?
Yes.
Commissioner Flick? Yes. Commissioner Lund?
Yes.
Commissioner Marshall?
Yes.
Commissioner Mobley?
Yes.
Commissioner Steve?
Yes.
Commissioner Weidberg?
Yes.
Commissioner Wittry?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes. Up next is the design review, docket 15220.
There are no public comments. The staff recommendation is approval with 1 proviso.
Is there any discussion from the commission or a motion?
Wittry will approve the design review with 1 proviso. That is 150.
I think we cut out. It's 15220. Is there a second?
Commissioner Mobley seconds.
Thank you, Commissioner Mobley. Any discussion? Commissioner Wittry moves to approve zoning docket 15220, approval with 1 proviso, seconded by Commissioner Mobley. I'll call the question. Commissioner Brown?
Yes.
Commissioner Flick, yes. Commissioner Lund?
Yes.
Commissioner Marshall?
Yes.
Commissioner Mobley?
Yes.
Commissioner Sieg?
Yes.
Commissioner Weidberg?
Yes.
Commissioner Wittry?
Yes.
Excellent. That motion passes. Next is the DDD budget. Is that something that we approve?
Yes, you do. You confirm that it's consistent with the master plan, and we recommend approval.
Thank you. Were there any public comments?
No public comments.
Thank you. Are there any comments, questions, or call for a motion from the commission?
Commissioner Brown will move approval.
Thank you, Commissioner Brown.
Commissioner Steig seconds.
Thank you. Commissioner Brown moves to improve the DDD budget report and work plan. Commissioner Steig seconds. Any discussion? I'll call the question. Commissioner Brown?
Yes.
Commissioner Flick? Yes. Commissioner Lund? Commissioner Lund?
Sorry, yes.
Thank you. Yes. Commissioner Marshall?
Yes.
Commissioner Mobley?
Yes.
Commissioner Sieg?
Yes.
Commissioner Weidberg?
Yes.
Commissioner Wittry?
Yes.
Motion passes. Oh, that seems to be it. Can we have a motion to adjourn?
Yes, and thank you, staff and everyone. Exhausting set of reports that you continue to provide us with that are excellent always. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Flick, for leading us forward today. We appreciate it. You did great.
Nice job driving, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I have a second to adjourn?
Second.
Roughly seconds.
Okay. All in favor? Bye.
Bye.
And bye.